What's up, Trial by Gamers? It's your man Nello, and today I got a special feature. I got this bad boy right here, Krivo The Bounty Hunter. Now, I don't normally say this too early in a review, but this right here is a figure of the year contender. Now, it could be because we just got 2 badass seasons of The Mandalorian, or maybe because I've been watching some fantastic episodes of Vash's Stampede on Trigun, but sci-fi westerns have a special place on my heart currently, and this right here just reinforces it that much more. This is a fantastic piece and a little bit of a rare one currently to get, and I'll have to explain that a little bit more in the feature. But as per usual, as we always do, I'm gonna give you guys a full breakdown and answer the question, why is this bad boy right here a figure of the year contender? All right, you guys, let's go ahead and get it. All right, starting as usual, we have here a beautiful looking box with some beautiful box art of Krivo in action, and damn is it dope looking. They chose a really good artist, you know, a really good looking pose just to put him in that really highlights a lot of the figure. And honestly, this is really how the figure looks. You'll see him when I bust him out, or maybe you've already seen him in one of my last reviews, but that really is how he looks like, and they do a great job of encapsulating, you know, what this figure is about. We have these, you know, beautiful reds that we have across. We have some of the, you know, the jetpack in the back that's igniting, the lights coming down on his eyes. I mean, this is a dope looking figure. And actually, you'll see kind of right there, it looks like there's another warrior back there, and I'm actually pretty sure that is the next in line that's going to get released. There was a photo that we were shown that had basically the silhouettes of all of these guys, and Krivo was one of them, and I believe that's the other one. And as I said, I wouldn't be surprised if it's the second one that we get. Now, on the side, this is what we get, and this is where we figure out that this is a 1/18th scale figure, which again is something that's very interesting because the original Astrobots were more 1/12th scale. So this changes the complete anatomy of these figures in terms of the world that they're in when they are 1/18th scale compared to that 1/12th scale that they originally were. But again, we see Oblivion Land on the side, Bounty Hunter Krivo, all the numbers. Again, just a more close-up shot of the bust, and it just looks pretty fucking dope. Now, on the back, we get something very different than we've gotten from the Acid Rain stuff line. We've gotten basically this entire breakdown of what the figure looks like. And as you can tell, Krivo can have a lot of fucking personality, and that's just something that is such a refresher about this specific figure. This is, again, using the Astrobot buck, and man, does it look good overall, especially on that big picture on the right. You know, all the other different components that he comes with, the energy pipe, the cowboy hat, the, you know, hand cannons, combat knife, and we're going to go through all that so you can take a look at what it's all about. And then what's really cool is we get a box of contents right there at the bottom that tells you everything that this should be coming out with. And again, a photo just to break down a lot like what we've seen with the Acid Rain stuff, but it's just really nice that we get this overall wonderful presentation. Now, the actual front is a cover that opens up kind of like a book, and I'll show you guys that in a sec. But here we get a, you know, more of a graphic novel or more of a character drawing of Krivo. And again, really badass looking. A lot of little things about him, little bios, the Oblivion Land, a lot of really nice stuff. And they're kind of setting this up almost like this is going to be like a video game or something. And I think that would be a wonderful idea if they can pull off something that's pretty original. But again, really nice drawing, really nice overall presentation to what is a badass figure. Now, normally I'd pause here and show you, but let me go ahead and actually do it on live. So if I twist this over, he's actually not in the box, but you can imagine he looks dope in there if he were in there. Now, real quick, I'm gonna go over it later, but basically there is a piece of him that you have to put onto him, which is his jetpack, and once you get it on, it's really fucking hard to get off, so that might be a knock, and I'll have to show you guys what I mean later. But because of that, I really actually couldn't put him back into the glass box here, or excuse me, the plastic window here, so you guys could actually see what he looks like. But I mean, you get the idea. Really dope looking presentation. I'm really happy that they did more of a closed box on the outside with the open glass window on the inside. It definitely brings the presentation up on this character. Now on the top side, we get more of that same stuff that we saw before, just this time in black and white. Again, presentation looks great. And on the bottom, we just get that insignia for Oblivion Land, and that's it, nice and clean. I also appreciate that. All right, you guys, so here we have Big Krivo himself, and damn, is this just a good looking figure. I mean, overall, this is a badass overall aesthetic, the looks, the details, the articulation. This is going to be probably one of the toughest reviews I've ever had to do, but again, this is something that really aligns itself with being one of the contenders of the year for figure of the year. I mean, this guy is just oozing with personality, and he's just standing there, and that's something that really lends to, you know, how worth this figure is to get if you can get him, because like I said, he is a little tricky. So before I get into the whole design, let's go ahead and cover this topic one more time. If you look at the body up and down, you're going to see all the resemblance to the Astrobots that we had before. Now, as I mentioned before, Astrobots didn't necessarily get that much attention when it first got out. I remember a few people talking about pre-orders and stuff like that, but once they came around, they were a very slow sell. But this right here, this retooling, it's the exact same body basically from here all the way around, but then the, you know, guns on the hands, the belt, the hat, the face itself, the pipe, the jetpack on the back, there's a lot of retooling, there's a lot of tooling that was put onto here to differentiate this from like a regular Astrobot, but it works so well. I feel like one of the things that was basically fighting against the Astrobots was that they were just kind of like these fighting robots, and that was just kind of as far as it went. But a giant fucking bounty hunter, because remember, this is 1/18th scale, a giant fucking bounty hunter who's just looks like a total hardcore badass, that sells me way more. And again, it could be because of the Mandalorian, or it could be because of Trigun, but this is where the money's at. So let me go ahead and give you guys the full 180 now that we've been looking at them. All right, so here we have from the front, from the top to the bottom. Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit more. Okay, so as you can tell, he does come with a hat, and the hat is super dope looking. Let me lighten it up just a little bit so you guys can see it better. All right, so as you guys can tell, this is a phenomenal looking figure. Where to even start from? So from the top, we do get a hat which is done in this very bright, very almost metallic brown. Let me go ahead and take it off of him. As you can tell, with the grays and everything. Then we're going to go over more of that later, but then as you can tell, nice clean lines on the face overall. He is wearing an eye patch, which makes him, again, that much more of a badass. We have the pipe that is removable. We have a different array of whites. We almost have more of bone white up here, more clear whites as we get to the bottom. We, again, more of the bone colored whites, some of the darker blacks, red on this piece right here that actually does move up and down, this pauldron style piece. And then I like how clear and crystal the white is on his collar. I think that really helps to stick out. And again, we do get some insignia, some writing right there on the top left. And then, of course, other grays like right there on the cross, the perforations right there, different grays on the piping that goes around his shoulder. And as we make our way down to the arms, again, we have red more here on the articulated portion, which is kind of dope because it bisects the black portion around it. Some of the white pieces that we see right here, more of the red. And then around the belt, we do have a slightly different white, almost like a more of a matted white, but still kind of darker. And then here we have more of like a crystal clear, but still matte white color. And that's really more because of the way that the plastic was molded. So now let me go ahead and focus on the legs. On the legs, we get even more color. So here we do get more of the blacks and whites and the reds that we get up here. And of course, some of the grays coming down. But I like that aesthetic. There's a lot of breakup of color here, so there's a lot of depth overall. And let me just move the belt a little bit if I can. And then right under here, you're going to see the black and the red for the inner hips. And you're going to see how that works later in the articulation. We get more of a tannish color right here for the top of the thighs. And again, like I said, grays, reds, and blacks all the way down. Now, from the side, he does strike a surprisingly good neutral pose. If I can get this straight down, you'll be able to see you can get him basically straight up and down. He has a beautiful neutral pose, and just the range here is pretty solid. Most of what you get and most of what you want to get out of this figure you will be able to get, for the exception of one place, but I'll show you guys that when we get to the articulation. But again, here we do see same colors all the way down. We have these rivets up here. You know what, let me go ahead and do a little zoom in for you guys. So again, here we do have more of a side shot, so we get to see this sort of half circle padding that we see at the top of the shoulder, the white in between, and these gray rivets that again have this red that bisects it down the middle for the articulation, which I think was a great choice, using this red for all the articulated pieces that we see. It makes it look more mechanical, and it kind of hides that joint altogether. More of this white, and we see a lot of sculpting all the way down with what looks like just the slightest wash in there. It might even just be the way the plastic was made. And then again, we do get some more of that black and gray down the arm. And then let's go ahead and go over the side of the jetpack while we have it. Gray tips going into a black portion, into again more piping. This gray color that we have right here, separate from this slate gray that we have right here, into this black portion in the back that connects to the back of Krivo himself. So again, pretty dope. And as you can tell, actually, if we come back up here to the top of the head, a different array of just basically grays and blacks throughout the top of his head with the white. Pretty dope overall, and I'll give you guys a close-up of his face in a second once I work my way down. Now, from the side shot, I'm usually doing more directly from the side, but in order for you to see what's going on here, I just have it slightly off put. Now, if you do take a look, you will see right here that we do have this hand cannon that actually goes on the back of the hand. Pretty dope. We do have basically more of the same blacks we've been seeing that are, again, a little bit more on just the way that they are molded black. There's not really a lot of color to it, but we do get a little bit of gray right there on the actual barrels, but it does come off as really dope. And I'm sure you can tell at this point, but the fingers themselves are red, and they all have are all fully articulated the same way a human's hand would be. So it's pretty insane, but we'll get to the articulation in a second. And again, we do see some of that red on the articulation right there in the thigh, a little bit more red right there for the arrows, the same kind of sandy grayish color, the metallic for the knees, which I think is a pretty good touch. And then we do get more of that black coming down, but let me see if I can make that any brighter for you. I feel like it's not bright enough. There we go. So it is a little brighter. There you go. You can take a better look, but we do get basically more of that red in the articulated portions, divots and other such things coming down the leg. Some of the gray right there on the feet, which that's a nice touch. It makes him look pretty rough and tumble. Like I get that he's a robot, I get that he's a cyborg and all this goodness, but this really makes him look nice and tough. And again, some of the red at the bottom of the feet. Now, I do want to mention that it is something cool that this is a robot, right? So all these different articulated points that you see, they're supposed to be there, right? This is how Krivo would look like even if it were real life, not like some of the figures that we get where obviously they in real life wouldn't have those joints, right? So this all melds together pretty damn well. Now, for the back, we're still greeted with an intense amount of not just what we see, but just the paint and some of the articulation that we'll get into a little bit later. But again, you do see from the top the pipes that are articulated. I'll show you that later. These discs right here, this disc portions that are right on the outside black with some of the gray, some nice whites coming down the middle. This backpack right here, this sort of almost generator looking thing, which as you can tell, it almost creates a face, right? Both eyes, the mouth down here. It looks pretty dope altogether. There's an intense amount of geometry going on in this area, and it shows, and it's something that's, really appreciated when we're taking a look at just what was put into this figure. And again, on the back side, now we're going to get a better view of some of that hand articulation right there. And you see how there's this divot right there? That goes into the sword in order to hold it. So while he does have individual fingers to be able to hold the knife that he comes with, he does actually come with something to hold it in place. So that's pretty dope. And then you're going to notice that right here under, we are going to have kind of the articulation. You're probably wondering how that works. You will see, but it does look pretty nice. And again, all the colorings that we've been seeing thus far, which lends him to looking pretty dope. And they even put some red on the heels, which I think is a very nice touch, because they could have left that part black. I mean, not a lot of people are going to see this back portion anyway, but the fact that they added added some red back there, and it looks good. I think, again, pretty nice touch. Alright, so on the opposite side of the arm, it's exactly the same as the other side. The only difference that we really see here is that we don't get the pauldron. But on this side, we do get to see the actual sheath itself, and it is an overall pretty nice looking sheath. Again, it's connected to this loose belt piece, but the sheath itself does look pretty dope all the way through. We do get basically a couple of different colors for the metals, and then the plastic that is supposed to be holding it in place, though I imagine, I guess it would be a metal in it of itself. Hold on, let me just adjust this a little bit. And then for the down on the feet, same stuff that we saw on the opposite side. So again, very clean, very stylistic, very personable. So I really like this piece on the full 360 view. There's not a bad angle that you can find this guy in. Alright, so when it comes to accessories, Krivo comes with a fair amount of stuff. Now I'm going to get into at this point why I wasn't able to put him back in the original packaging, and that has to do basically with the backpack that he has on. But before I get to that moment, let me go ahead and show you guys everything else. Alright, so here we actually have all the stuff that he comes with, and as you can tell, he comes fairly loaded with stuff. Okay, so let me go ahead and break each piece down for you. So we do get this belt piece that does look pretty good. It does match a lot of the plastics that Krivo comes with. Some of the more bonish white on the belt itself, and then a little bit more of a mattish, clear colored white down the center, and it does clip together. The actual belt doesn't have anywhere to physically clip onto Krivo himself, which to me is a little bit of a downer, but I'll get into the more specifics later. And then each one of these divots that you see, 1, 2, 3, and then a few more on each side, you can basically remove the sheath and put it anywhere on there, which is pretty dope. It does give you a lot of options, and it does hinge right there and then swivel on that. And so you could have him pulling the sword out towards the back or towards the front, and then the actual plastic that we get here, again, really nice looking overall. So again, I think this is a nice piece. The only thing that I wish is that it connected somewhere hard onto Krivo, maybe like on his back or something, just to keep it more in place for when you want it to stay in place. Next, we have his actual pipe, and it does look pretty dope. White all the way through, silver down the middle, silver on the top. I do believe there's silver on the bottom, as you can tell, and the cup itself is actually painted silver on the inside, so that looks pretty nice. And then we see this red sort of energy effect down the center of it right there. So nice touch, and it does look pretty good, especially when he actually does have it protruding from his mouth. Next, we do have the hand cannons, and they do look pretty clean overall. Grays on the barrels, black on the basically the hand piece itself, and it looks good overall. For the most part, you're not going to see that inside part, but on the outside, it does look pretty clean. And when he does have it posed up, it does have an effect to it. And I'm happy that we got one for each hand. It does make him look pretty badass, and it goes with the gunslinger motif. Now, the hat, as you saw earlier, it's a dope, clean, very clean, aesthetically speaking hat, and I really appreciate and enjoy that. We basically have these metals around the tips of the brim, and it does look pretty good overall. A little bit of black on the actual headpiece with those white pieces towards the front, and then the hat itself is fairly three-dimensional. You know, it has these grooves right here at the top, a couple of divots all around. I think for the most part, it's very clean, very good looking Western style, but futuristic at the same time hat. And then that is where it plugs into the top of Krivo's head, which it actually doesn't look too bad. You really have to be looking at it from the top to even notice it on Krivo's head, but for the most part, very clean, very nice aesthetic. And from the smaller accessories, this knife is pretty damn cool. I'm not gonna lie. So we get basically almost the exact same gray on the hilt and what we get on the blade itself, but it is just, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the texture, maybe it's the finish. It's the slightest bit different, but then the backing of it is black, which is nice. It definitely gives it a nice contrast between both of them. Look at that shine, you can see it. And then there's also a red right behind the blade itself, which almost makes it look like it's some kind of energy weapon, and I like that. I like how they're able to blend this aesthetic in here of making it look old school but futuristic at the same time, and it is a badass blade. Now, while this is a blade for him, he is a 1/18 scale character, so this is more of a fucking broadsword for basically everything else that he would be fighting, because this would skewer most of his opponents if this is really a 1/18 scale world. Now for the backpack itself, it's a ginormous piece and it takes up the front and center of the spine, of course, but there's just a lot to it. It almost looks like a face with both the eyes and the mouth right there. Pretty crazy look to it, but I can appreciate it. Now what's really dope is that it's articulated. So let me go ahead and show you what it looks like straight down. So that's what it looks like, basically extended straight back, but it can go all the way down itself, and it basically hinges. I'll get this out of the way now so we can pass it up on articulation, but it basically hinges right there, and then on each and every single exhaust piece, so actually not individual but both sides, it hinges all the way. So you do get a lot of personality in the jetpack on how you want to display it, and then it actually does fold even further down because there is a hinge right there. And so I guess this would be a good moment for me to break into why this piece is the reason why I wasn't able to repackage it. So let me go ahead and give it a little bit more so you can see. So right there, this piece right here slips out on each end. So if you are buying Krivo and you're trying to figure out how to put the backpack on, it doesn't actually tell you in any of the instructions, but this piece right here and the identical piece on the other side slide out, so you can put this piece in and then slide it back in to lock it. Now I've tried a few times to pull it off and I can't seem to do it, and I don't want to break it because as of right now I'm not quite sure how to buy another one of these, because this might have been a single runtime because we haven't gotten, or I haven't seen it come back up on Pia Club. But yes, that would be how you would do it. So of all the reasons that you would be willing to buy this right here, coming from just the spectacular design, the really cool aesthetic, just the style and personality of this figure, out of all of that, one of the main reasons why you would buy this and why for me it's one of the contenders of the year, for figure of the year, is the articulation. So let me go ahead and break it down for you so you guys can see just how amazing this guy is. So if we start from the top of the head, basically he the neck itself has a joint as well, and then the top of the neck does that connects to the head, and you can actually see it, but I'll show you how. So if we look up, he can look up pretty damn far, basically up at the sky. And then if we open his mouth, it actually does hinge, and we can have him basically roaring. And as you can tell, there's like a ball hinge in there that's red, and I think that's super dope because it makes it look like there's some kind of power energy back there, or something that's powering him up, right? So pretty dope look. And then look at that, man, look at those teeth. It's pretty insane. And then he can look down, and as you can tell, it kind of tucks behind the armor, so he can basically look straight down, or at least obviously down, so you're not going to need much more than that. And then he can get a little bit to the side and a little bit to the other side, giving him just an incredible amount of personality just in the head itself. Now the pauldron on the right shoulder does basically go straight up. It is on a ball, so you do get everything that you would get articulation wise for a ball, and you can't bring it obviously flat, but again, you can, if you're like winding up his arm for a punch, you can move it out of the way, so that's pretty nice. Now for his arm, it does come out a full 90 degrees if you're just using the hinge itself, but if you actually do look behind, obviously under that shoulder right there, we do have this circular piece, and I'm not quite sure what's under there, but he gets backwards pretty damn far, forwards a pretty good amount, and then it does rotate, like if he's flexing his shoulder, you know what I mean, like doing some shoulder rolls. That's really nice. It's like a super improved butterfly joint, and it gets him a lot of range, and he can do a full 360 with the arm, and without needing to do anything else, he goes way past 90 using all the articulation in the shoulder. So that is pretty damn good. At the top of the bicep, we do get a full 360 swivel, and then at the elbow, we do get a double elbow joint, but this one's a little bit different. Let me go ahead and show you. So as you can tell, we do have one of the joints right here, but the second one actually connects right there. And what ends up happening is as you bring the elbow forward, it basically reveals this red elbow joint below it. And what's so cool is that it looks like this is how it would naturally move without distorting the look of the entire elbow itself. And it's a really nice 90 degree, but then you can continue it all the way to the top and you get way past 90 and it still looks perfect. They really thought about the engineering on this, on where everything was going to end at the end of its travel for the articulation. Now the hand gets even crazier. So we do get a full 360 of the hand, and we can make it go about that far up, or I guess I should say down, and then on the opposite direction he can give you a force blast if he wanted to. Now all the fingers are individually articulated, which lends to some really dope ass posing overall. And so we do get 1, 2, 3 hinges on each of the regular fingers, which allows him to bring it down into an actual fist. And then the thumb itself actually is a ball joint, which allows it to swing it forward so you can grab stuff, or even up, like if he's going to give you the thumbs up sign. Here we're doing the peace sign. And then separate from that, as I mentioned earlier, that right there is to connect basically to his weapon, but I'm sure that we will see similar technology and other weapons from other releases that we will see soon. The other arm articulation is exactly the same. The only thing that changes here is that he doesn't have the pauldron that he has on the other side. Now at the top of the torso, we do have somewhat of a hinge swivel, because he can kind of go to the side like that, other side the same way, which again gives him plenty of personality. And then it hinges forward about that far forward, and I have not moved his head at all. All I did was move the top of the torso, which allows him to basically look at the ground. And if I want to push it back, it allows him to puff up his chest and basically be looking straight forward. And if I had his head normal, he'd probably be looking straight up. Now, as we move down to the leg, this is kind of where I have my only real gripe about the actual figure itself. And I was going to save this for the problem section, but I think this guy has such few problems that I might as well bring it up here. The Astrobots have, as you can tell, this weird kind of jointing right there, where it's kind of on a disc on either side and it's at an angle, which isn't a problem when he's standing straight forward, in a neutral pose, because his legs go straight down to the ground, absolutely no problem. But here's the funny part. Let me go ahead and show you. Yeah, so this guy cannot kick forward. If somebody was right in front of him, he was trying to kick him in the nuts, it wasn't about to happen. They'd have to be basically to the side of him for him to kick. He'd be kicking the guy next to the guy whose nuts he's trying to kick, because it just goes out to the side, which is not a huge problem. You can get most of the poses that you want. And as you know, and it's not a big deal, but it is something to know, to mention, that his legs literally go out to the side and there's no way to bring it more closer, but he still has great articulation. So as you saw at the top, they do go out to the side, but he does have a hinge, so he can kick perfectly to the side, so you can get him in a good kicking pose. He does have double joints at the knees, which allow him to do something like this, which gets him way past 90 degrees, and it gets him literally to his physical limit. Again, I love how flush that looks when you go all the way with his joints. It literally fits into a crevice into the back of the leg. That's very nice engineering. And then at the ankles themselves, he does have a rocker, which does allow him to go pretty damn forward to the side. Same thing towards the inside, so he does get a lot of articulation right there. And then on the actual foot itself, he can point down that far and up about that far, so pretty far back but not too much towards the front. And then the foot does go up about that far, which is about as much as you'll ever need. All right, you guys, so ultimately Krivo is just an outstanding character. I mean, the Astrobots was already something that was fairly interesting. Granted, I don't think there was a lot of popularity over it, but this right here, this is sheer proof of what they can do with that platform. This is just a phenomenal figure with a certain amount of style, swagger, and just articulation, except for the actual hips, but that's something that I can work around. But besides that, this is bar none one of the best figures I have purchased in quite some time. The reality is that by making this guy 1/18th scale figure, he's immediately a lot more interesting than his 1/12 counterparts, which, while they are all the same size and it's your world, you can do what you want, it's still something that begs the question of what is the rest of the world around him going to look like when he is one of the massive characters, and what else we might see down the line. Overall, the amount of personality that you get in a figure like this is quite refreshing, especially for the price. There's not many figures that come in this size, this quality, and gives you this amount of articulation overall. I don't think we speak about it enough when we're talking about other brands like SH Figure Arts or other such brands, where while they are expensive and they do come with a lot of paint and stuff like that, sometimes they do feel a little flimsy. Not the case with this guy. All of Krivo's joints feel nice and tight. Everything has a certain amount of weight to it. Everything moves and engineers in a way that makes a lot of sense. Not a single portion of him feels all that flimsy, and sometimes, just sometimes, his middle section feels like it's being weighed down in the slightest bit by the fact that he has the big old backpack and a lot of weight up top. But for the most part, this is a phenomenal figure that's easy to stand, fun to pose, and comes with so much to it that, you know, it's almost endless the amount of different things you can do with him, and just how you want to basically pose him in your diorama and what you want to do with this guy, because basically he can do it all, and there's not many figures that can do it all and at the same time feel like they're a specific amount of quality like this guy. A lot of times the figures that give us everything that I've just said usually come with some amount of compromise, and I think with this guy the only real compromise is just the sheer size that he comes in, because he's not the easiest to deal with, but he is fairly easy to pose. He is fairly easy to, you know, hold his weapons. Everything is a very secure fit, and again, not a lot of figures do it as well as this guy does. And again, he is a robot. He does get away with having the divots and the articulation joint points and all those things because he's a robot. He's supposed to have all that, so he kind of gets a pass compared to other figures that have all that, because you couldn't put this level of articulation into a more organic looking character. They would just look all Frankenstein like some of the Revoltic shit that we get. But this guy right here is able to pull it off flawlessly, and I appreciate Oblivion Land and Acid Rain and just the whole Toy Lines team for bringing us the second coming of the Astrobots. So I did want to do a quick size comparison, and I'm actually going to have to be, just because of how little space I have and for how large this character is, instead of doing it side by side, I'm going to put each one in front of him just so you can get a good sense of how big this guy is compared to anybody else. So let's go ahead and get it. So for starters, I do have SH Figure Arts Bardock, and as you can tell, pretty small. This is I want to say this is how big like Nappa would be behind him, and as you can tell, even to the tippy top of his hair, it's still kind of below the chin, so Krivo is a lot bigger than Bardock. Next, we do get the Heavy Mando in front of him, and as you can tell, Heavy Mando looks a bit more on par with scale here. He's a bit of a larger action figure from the SHF line, and as you can tell, he's still about a head shorter than Krivo, and Krivo is a lot more massive up top in terms of like shoulders and the arms and everything, but this looks a little bit more on par. Now we do have the Black Series Count Dooku, and he does stand fairly tall. He is a 6-inch action figure, and as you can tell, about the same size as the Heavy Mando, just comes right under the chin of Krivo. So obviously Krivo is a lot more massive than he is in every single other dimension, but in terms of height, he does come up just slightly taller, or a whole head taller. Now, switching over to 1/18th scale, we're going to put the Interceptor Camelbot right in front of him, and that actually looks pretty accurate. So a regular 1/18th scale figure, and actually the Interceptor Camelbot is one of the taller ones that we've gotten so far, if not the single tallest one we've gotten in 1/18th scale, for at least the regular infantry. He still only comes up basically below where his chest would start, or you could even say his abs, his robot abs in quotations. So pretty damn big, which just again begs the question, if he's 1/18th scale, what are all the other figures supposed to be like if he's basically one of the biggest guys out there? Now, this right here is the Ajax Hoplite, which is the quintessential regular size trooper. The only thing that's smaller than him are some of the female bucks, and he basically comes down by Krivo's balls. I mean, this dude is small. He's basically up to his hips. It takes literally two of him to make one Krivo. And as you can tell with the size of Krivo's hands, he could pick up the Ajax by the waist and chuck him like a football. So again, it just begs the question, what are they doing with this line right here? And why is Krivo so damn massive? But I love it. It just begs the question of what's coming out next. It makes me excited for what are they going to do to follow this one up. And last but not least, we do have Batman from the Curse of the White Knight, basically the Azrael in the bat armor. And actually, if you look at it from here, he is just the slightest bit taller than Krivo. He completely covers him, and that's partially because of obviously the cape, but for the most part, as you can tell, Krivo is not bigger than the McFarlane 6/7 inch scale figures. So it's again pretty massive if you can put him up next to this Batman, because this is one of the tallest Batman figures we have gotten from McFarlane. So when it comes to Krivo the Bounty Hunter, this is one of the best pieces that is going to come out this year. from great articulation to loads of personality to just a bunch of style that a lot of figures lack. And of course, the 1/18 scale is very interesting because obviously he's going to end up being a large figure amongst anything that you currently have that's 1/18. It might even look a little funky, but I'm very excited to see what Oblivion Land is going to be bringing in the future that can coincide with other things like Acid Rain, Joy Toy, and the likes. So as per usual, if you guys did like this, please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know at the bottom if you guys are having a hard time getting him, and if you do get him, do you feel once he's in your hands that what I'm saying about him being a figure of the year contender true to you or not? All right, you guys. So I have more things coming up soon, but keep an eye out. As I mentioned, like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what you thought. This was a TBG feature, and I was your host, Nello, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Deuces.